Welcome to Happy Times and Places, a positively inclined Doctor Who episode commentary podcast with me, Toby Hadoke. We're slightly tweaking the format this week. We're going to hear from our special guest after we've watched the episode. He, by the way, is Richard Marson, former contributor to Doctor Who magazine. He's written books about Verity Lambert and John Nathan Turner, and was also once the editor of Blue Peter. I'm going to be interviewing him post-show to see what it is that he likes about this week's episode, which is the conclusion, part 4, of his chosen story, Terror of the Autons. Well, I've just called simply to say hello, Doctor. Let's not leave him hanging on the telephone for any longer than he needs to be. So we're going to fire up Terror of the Autons, episode 4, in 3, 2, 1, play. So yeah, the black and white print of this I saw was taped off air from Australia. And I got my early bootlegs. Don't arrest me. Is there a statute of limitations? They weren't available on video. I got them from a comic shop, now long closed down in Wolverhampton, called The Chase. The Place. There's a Freudian slip. It's named after a Doctor Who story. And you take in 2 videotapes, and you get one back with episodes on. So you paid in kind. You paid in videotapes. And I got mine from a cash and carry. They were called Yashima. And they were really cheap, and he much preferred it when I upgraded to Scotch, when it was revealed that Yashima weren't quite so good quality. But Terror of the Autons was the first Pertwee I got in black and white. It's again, this is something I'd imagined being sort of dark and terrifying, the strangling cableman. It is slightly more comical, isn't it, than I think I'd envisaged. But I think because if you'd done all of this without a twinkle and a sense of humour, Brigadier, but you see, is he joking? He's not joking. The Brigadier wasn't joking then. He played it dead straight, which Nicholas Courtney is very good at doing. But it means the joke. Oh yeah, I don't know. But if it wasn't played with a twinkle, and if it wasn't slightly zany, it would be simply unsuitable for children. I mean, at the time, it was deemed unsuitable for children in many ways. Oh, I like that military policeman or whatever he is, his outfit. Totally forgotten about that guy. He looks good. I like his leather jerkin. No, it's not heat. And you can actually see the heat on that. Yeah, because this was... And I remember Robert Holmes in his brilliant essay... Was it in his essay in the Doctor Who file, or was it on in one of the interviews he did with Doctor Who magazine, where he talked about talking to Ronnie Marsh, who was head of drama, and Ronnie Marsh saying, we had this clot. But when he was being interviewed for the script editor's job, that's right, Robert Holmes' anecdote was, just going there to sort of dot the I's and cross the T's. And this Ronnie Marsh, head of drama, said, yeah, we had this idiot some years ago who wrote a story with killer daffodils and telephone wires, got questions asked, so don't do that sort of thing. And Robert Holmes, he does a thing saying, I put down some of Ronnie's horrible coffee. And it's weird because Ronnie Marsh was one of those names people thought, some sort of long dead BBC head honcho. But actually, we ended up interviewing Ronnie Marsh in one of our documentaries. Ed Stradling got hold of him, and we went and had a chat and had a lovely time with Ronnie and his wife Judy. His wife Judy was a PA on The Abominable Snowmen. So amazing that those sort of names that you thought were so unreachable. Ended up going, have a lovely time in their flat. I had to shoot off for a gig, so I didn't do the whole interview, but I got to spend some time, and the coffee was very nice, but it was BBC coffee in the Holmes anecdote. Now, I think Sergeant Benton wasn't in it last week, was he? I thought maybe he was just in one scene in episode 3, or was he? Was he actually not in it? I can't remember. Doesn't matter. You've seen it. Now they look very good in their outdoor fatigues. That's much better than the sort of beigey, slightly more formal battle dress of yesteryear. This is a really good look. Down and dirty. But yeah, you have your cake and eat it there, Doctor. I don't like the military. They blow things up. Brigadier, kindly blow this thing up. I'm the Doctor. I don't kill people. Brigadier, kindly kill this person. It's a brilliant storytelling device. It's a brilliant way of and it works here because of this sort of bristling mutual respect relationship they had. I don't know if we're supposed to find David Tennant's Doctor a hypocrite in the Sontaran strategy. The amount of times he tells Colonel Mace off for having guns and for doing military things, you go, yeah, but you're gonna let you need them to do it, so you could be at least a bit sort of I think that it's nothing wrong with the way that David Tennant's playing it. I think it's the way that it's played within the story. I don't think it. I think it may be deliberate. It may be deliberate to highlight the Doctor's hypocrisy. But here I think I think we can live with it without judging anybody. I just think the balance is right, is right here, in this whole era, really. I like the moral stands the Doctor makes. I like the morality of the era of the producer who is, conscious of ecology and is, very much a liberal who's against pollution, who's about trying to do understanding between races and things like that. And yet it's the era that's where you're working with a military force. But there's an undercurrent there of saying, yeah, well, to actually stand for the things that you believe in, even if they're good and peaceful and decent, you might need to back those up with military force. And that, that's complicated for us. But the human race is always blowing things up for what it thinks is a good reason. It just depends whether you're the blower or the blowee, whether you like it or not. The spray of death, this was originally called, and of course that's the first bit of spraying that's happened. But what an ingenious! Now I imagined it just to be a little sort of film, it's a bit more of a thing, but it's an ingenious way of dispatching a human. Cut off there. That's a wonderful idea. And it's so macabre, and that idea, and I didn't know of the dying breath, and I had to sort of think about that, and then went, oh yeah, when you see people die on telly, they sort of go, so of course you get rid of the last thing that's in your lungs, and of course that dissolves it, so takes away the evidence. What a glorious, grotesque, macabre, inventive mind Robert Holmes has. There's unit on a knoll in the studio looking at a coach on film, and that's just the sort of thing we have to get used to when watching 70s telly. This wasn't unique to Doctor Who. It was an aesthetic that you soon got used to. But I think it's the fact that the evidence is then disposed of. That's a nifty effect as well, of the dissolving plastic. Beautiful. So just a series of corpses by daffodils, no evidence, and it's an escalation of the Master's plans. Is this the first time? This is the first time they meet. Yes. Well, what a moment, and what a pair they are. I wonder who the Master's other opponents are. I wonder if there are various less influential time travelers that he goes and, lays traps for, or when he just kills them first go. And again, this I can see what critics of this era sort of say. Well, this cozy relationship between the two, but. And the last line was changed of the episode. He was supposed to say something like, "The Master's, I'll be fighting the Master until I kill him or he kills me." And it was Ronnie Marsh that said that's a bit too on the nose. So instead he says, "In fact, I'm rather looking forward to it." Which, of course, you go, well, you're looking forward to an encounter with someone whose presence is going to cause the death of many innocent people and whose aim is to destroy the world and kill everybody on it. Yet these stories are made by a generation of people who, for whom wartime was a not too distant memory, for whom war stories were common, and war service in the case of people like Pertwee and Barry Letts and Roger Delgado, and often when you read their stories, war was about a lot of boredom. And they yearned for action, not because they wanted to die or they wanted to kill anybody, but because it sort of got it over with, and because it broke the boredom, which sounds perverse, I'm sure, until you're in the situation where if you're gonna have it's like waking up from a nightmare, or pulling off the plaster. If it's gonna happen, it may as well happen now. And then the sooner it happens, the sooner it's over. And if it's over and I'm still here, the sooner I know I'm not gonna die today or whatever. So that idea of the sort of adrenaline kick of an encounter with a mortal enemy may seem a little cozily boy's own in its approach, but actually I think was more. I think something you could more psychologically buy into if you were from the early 1970s than perhaps me as a somebody that was born in 74, so a bit later. So yes, Rex Farrell's finally got his conscience, but Bessie looks great. I've never quite figured out nobody's why wheels look like they're going backwards when they're going forwards on telly. I'm sure somebody scientific will tell me. In fact, don't. I'm happy. I'm happy to live with the mystery, and I probably wouldn't understand what you said anyway. Oh yeah, so, and of course that's the Brigadier's solution is to blow things up. But he's not gonna. This is actually tense now. It's right. All the close-ups, have they aborted in time? The stock footage arrives and goes overhead, and that was all done with the simplest of means. And I love the lighting in the coach, and those close-ups were great. That was a good moment. That was a really effective moment. I mean, you kind of know that, the bombs aren't going to drop, but they wrung all the tensance out that they could have done. And they're sort of filming everybody from below. It's hard to film in a coach. I like the Master's grudging respect for Farrell finally developing a backbone and standing up to him. Although it is a slightly odd characterisation with him because he was so sort of sarky at the death of McDermott and then snivelling, and then it's. Michael Wish is very good, but I don't think Rex Farrell's going to be high in anyone's sort of most memorable guest character list, which is a shame. But Michael Wisher will be praised many times in this podcast because he was terrific, and his Davros is one of the show's finest ever creations and performances. Oh, and Carnival of Monsters, when we get to that. Oh, I will be like a pig in the proverbial Morse code with a brake light. That is nicely sort of ingenious, Doctor Who-y, showing kids how you can do a clever thing, and I like that. That's a very Doctor Who-y way out of trouble. Very good, very good. So I'm pleased to say I've enjoyed this more than I expected. I have to say, I still don't think it will ever be in my list of favourite stories, but the military stuff's all very good. I would like more Autons, but then again, perhaps that's the point. It tantalises you, because if they were just all over it, and this happens with Doctor Who a lot in the 70s, I used to think, well, if they've gone to the expense of making the monster, why can't we see a lot of it? But of course, this is made for a generation of people for whom things were held back in drama. I remember everyone talks about the Nigel Neal play Baby, don't they? And this one shot of actually quite an absurd looking thing, but because it's built up to, and because it's only on for a very short amount of time, everybody that watched it says, oh God, it was this most incredible thing, because their imagination did more than their visualization, because their imagination had been working for the majority of the screen time, and the visualization for much less. And actually, it's a lesson in that we do want everything. We always want the money shot, but the build up to it is actually where the excitement and the drama lies. That was a nice shot of the coach in the puddle. Film cameraman there has gone, oh, Gov, why don't I do that and you do that? We've got a little Ford there in the road, so I'll give you some bumper. I don't know why I made the film cameraman a Cockney stuntman, but I did. Who was it? John Baker, I think. I don't know what he sounded like, so that was not a rendition of the actual John Baker. Now this is the sort of stuff I wanted. Fighting and action. Very good. Bit of a stunt there. Pertwee leaping out, and I think that's twice poor old Farrell's been knocked out with a blow to the back of the neck / back, which is what I call the Mission Impossible maneuver, where you hit somebody between the shoulder blades to knock them out. It's too late. Yes, I always think the monsters shouldn't do contractions or abbreviations. I don't know why, because saying it is too late is a bit cliched. But, oh, another unit soldier blowing up with smoke. Yeah, I loved all that stuff. Terrible bloodthirsty. Oh, yes, this is cracking. Flying through the air. That's what we want. And this was the other anecdote. This was the Richard Franklin anecdote where he's got a bit later where he says, I had this close-up where I said, that's it, sir, we've got him now. And apparently the delivery was so bad that they didn't use the close-up. Roy Scammell! Lovely blonde-haired Roy Scammell, who is the fall guy, and look at that fall. That's a terrific stunt. Adds nothing to the story. Just some poor technician walking down the wrong gantry at the wrong time and hurled off. And that's Barry Letts going, right, we're going to set it on Earth, we're going to make it look good, we're going to have stunts, hardware, and all those bits and bobs really do help. But this, yes, so this is where, and I remember watching this going on, and now we're going to see, hopefully they'll have learnt to make it better than the monster in Spearhead from Space, thought I. How will they do it? Oh, it's a blob of paint. But again, it's making you use your imagination. But my imagination had been helped along by the Target novel, which very much got the money shot splattered in front of the page in pen and ink. Look at that, brilliant! And this is I'd forgotten about that one as well. There's lots of, is that Alan Chun's there? I think it was. Loads of unit soldiers getting killed. How delightful! This is the stuff. Death and destruction. But the fact it's being dispensed by, grotesque carnival masks in yellow blazers, gives it again a macabre juxtaposition of the sort of the jolly and the destructive. I mean, you could have rung the master at any point, Doctor, and gone, that they're not gonna, the Nestines aren't gonna. It's quite a. It's almost like this is about introducing the Master and the Doctor, and the Auton threat is sort of less important. And all it takes is for the Doctor to go, they're not gonna think much of you, Master. And the Master goes, I think you're right, Doctor. But I guess it's a bit like the anti-plastic in Rose. The story is more concerned with other things, so you go, we can dispense with that. I'm sympathetic to that, but I think, again, because this was a story that has always done very well. This is we've got him now. That's it. So we've got him now. Apparently, I think that was originally in Close Up, and or there was a version of that in Close Up, and Barry Letts wasn't hugely happy with it, and Richard Franklin told a self-deprecating story about his delivery of that line being a bit over the top and not going down well. And the other anecdote for this, and that's that photo of Roger Delgado with his hands in the air was used a lot. But there's the story Michael Wisher used to tell was that because this is spoiler alert, this is Rex Farrell. So for the shot we see that reveals that it's not the Master but Rex Farrell, whose body I think gets run over by the lorry by the coach, which is pretty bad. Because he'd been under the mask for quite a while, his face was completely white, so people worried that he'd actually died. Although he wasn't wearing the mask when he was shot. Anyway, it's a nice story. So they actually thought Michael Wisher might have been dead there, and he's dead with his eyes open, which is I always think is a grown up. I don't know why I think it's somehow, because it avoids the cliche. Look, Rex Farrell is definitely in the path. Oh no. Well, his body's around there somewhere. I sort of think Rex Farrell might get squashed there, which is pretty grim. Yeah, I like a death with eyes open. It just goes against what we're used to, so seems somehow more grotesque. And I don't know. Death is part and parcel of Doctor Who stories, isn't it? It's an exciting thing, which is terrible, really, if you think about what it is we're saying. Or perhaps I'm just opening a window into my psyche. You, Toby, obsessed with death with all your obituaries and Facebook posts about the latest character actor Cull from the Grim Reaper with his copy of Who's Who on television 1970, and so that he's scything through. I'm rather looking for... Oh, gosh, it ends actually very quickly. That's a very short coda. The story, you always think of the wind down as being a bit more laboured than that, but that was very, very quick right to the end. Well, look, I still think that story has shortcomings. I think I was saying I interrupted myself. I think because this is a story that is sort of designated a classic, or certainly was when I was growing up, and one of the best Pertwees. I don't think it is one of the best Pertwees, but I've certainly found plenty to accentuate the positive Oz. And I also think that perhaps some of my reticence about it is the gap between what I expected and what it was. And actually, what it is not a compromise. It is what it means to be. So it cannot be blamed for anything I might have imposed upon it before I had seen it. So in a way, perhaps anything that where it falls short for me is actually my fault and not its. And I found so much to recommend in that. I would happily sit and watch that and enjoy it. I think doing this has made me actually want to go back and watch it and shut up and enjoy it. And things like the banter with Rossini and little bits where I thought the scenes of people sitting around talking were a bit much. Were actually much more entertaining. I think if I see it as a sort of Robert Holmes story, I might, and the things that he became more of his trademark as he went on. I think I might receive it better. So I have to choose a thing from episode 4 and an overall thing. So the thing from episode 4 that I'm going to choose is I think, if not just the unit battle, but the look of the Autons, the fact that the Autons are these sort of carnival masked psychopathic alien yellowcoats. So I'll put alien yellowcoats. And you know, and the fact that they're fighting, you know, recognizable soldiers in military fatigues, that juxtaposition I think is very nice. So episode 4, alien yellowcoats. But but episode 4 has reminded me of what I think is you know, the standout thing that covers the whole story. But it certainly comes into its own in episode 4, which I think, and I covered it when I talked in detail, I think, about the ingenuity of the plastic over the mouth and nose, and then the disintegration of it with the dying breath. I'm going to call that inventive death dispensing. Why not? Well, I've written it now. I'm committed. So, but you know, the fact that we have the chair and the troll doll and and even actually I've just seen it on the DVD menu, the shrinking, which I know becomes a master trademark throughout, but it's seen here for the first time. But particular, I think, as evident as demonstrated by the plastic over the mouth that disappears, the inventive death dispensing, because it's also it shows us a sort of morbid sense of humor, which is sort of good fun, but also a really guilty pleasure when you start to think about what it is you find fun about it. And I quite like the fact that it plays with you like that. Is that I'm not sure I'm comfortable with the idea that you know, inventive death is something that piques my interest. But it's escapist drama, and you're allowed to press certain buttons when you're doing escapism that you perhaps don't in real life, and it's an outlet. So perhaps I'd be planning inventive death for people if I didn't get to scratch that itch watching Doctor Who. So in a way, we're all safer. Let's see what Richard Marson has chosen in the future. So, and we get to the final episode and the bonus. How big a part does Doctor Who play in your life now, Richard?
Doctor Who for me in this year, it's quite been interesting because obviously it's been a very challenging year for everybody. For me now, it's very much a lovely way of accessing a bit of joy when I'm feeling down or when I'm feeling, you know, I just know there's certain things I can go to and put them on and it will make me feel a bit better, a bit happier. And in a way that's wonderfully uncomplicated, because I don't go away and think I want to read all about how it was made, or I want to examine it or explore it or debate. I actually loathe now any sort of pulling apart of the plot, because I just sort of think that's missing. It's not missing the point if that's your thing. And I've done it lots myself in the past. But Terror of the Autons as a story, for instance, does not in any way hold up to logical analysis, and it's kind of, but that's missing the point of what these were. They were like, you know, Saturday cliffhanging serials for a family to really enjoy for 20 months, and that's what I want to go back to, and so that's what it gives me now, and that's what I try to connect to. The only downside to that is it means that there are chunks of the program I kind of don't very often revisit because they're not the bits that spoke to me most, and then I feel like a bad fan and that I should be, you know, I should be challenging myself and really trying to get something out of Paradise Towers, which is maybe there that other our mutual friend Chris Chapman, who adores it and will wax lyrical about it for hours, but I just can't get in there because my experience of it at the time coloured my view of it so badly. And, you know, I was so resentful at the time that what I thought was a good script had been so badly interpreted. I can't get past it. So you see, I want to now just go to the pure joy bringers like Terror of the Autons.
Well, I remember your review of Paradise Towers in Doctor Who magazine, quite an unprecedented drubbing. I see.
And I just say quickly, shout out to John Nathan Turner, who let us print that. Wow. Because, you know, that was a shift in I think he'd had such a battering himself, but actually it was very interesting that I remember the editor saying, I'll send it through, but I just don't think this is going to get past him. And I think he cut a couple of tiny things, but really that was very, very you know, good for him.
Good for him, absolutely. Well, and look, you've sort of summed up very handily there what this podcast is about, because I sometimes go into social media to escape and just to sort of revel in the thing I like. And I see so many people yelling at each other about it. I'm trying with this
Yeah.
to, one of the reasons talking to people like yourself is because it's nice to hear what other people like about Doctor Who. But two, for me to go into a story with my eyes open, to like it for what it is rather than perhaps what my younger self would have wanted it to be. And it's been really educational, actually. And in this sort of time of schisms and darkness and locked doors, I've been really enjoying it, and I hope the listeners are too. So that brings us to episode 4 and the bonus thing. I've chosen, actually both of my things are sort of from episode 4, but one is all encompassing and maybe ties in with something you've already said, but we will see that. So what is your thing from episode 4 and your bonus piece of joy about Terror of the Autons?
Well, I feel like I owe this moment of episode 4 quite a lot, personally, professionally. It's the revelation of how the next part of the Nestine/master plot to ruin everything for humanity is using the daffodils. And they spit film over the nose and mouth. I'm not sure if I'm supposed to avoid spoilers, in which case I've spectacularly failed to do. But anyway, that moment, years later, decades later, I was working on Blue Peter, and we had a serial called The Quest, which was essentially a rip-off of Doctor Who with other telefantasy moments in it. And the presenters would all play parts. And we were doing one called Masters of Time. And the villainess was played by Jean Marsh, and Peter Purvis cropped up at some point. So there were a lot of nods and references. And the scripts came in, and there were various issues with some of them. And in one episode, they all finished on a cliffhanger. One of the episodes did not have, in my view, a convincing denouement. It didn't have a cliffhanger we could shoot. And I remember talking to the director and saying, you're not going to be able to achieve this, not in the time and the money. And even if we had pots of money, it's still really complex what had been written. And we needed something that would work quite quickly. And I remembered Terror of the Autons. And I said, have a bunch of flowers delivered to the character's dressing room door. And she takes a little sniff, and then out comes the plastic film over her nose. And we did the whole thing. I was amazed that no Doctor Who fans picked up on the completely shameless rip-off. But it got us out of a hole, and it was actually really quite easy to shoot and very effective. And, you know, the Blue Peter audience loved it. So I was really glad. And that totally came from Terror of the Autons. So that's my moment from that episode.
Ah, brilliant. Well, that sort of ties in with one of mine. So give me your bonus one as well, and then I'll give you both of mine, because I think there is some sort of cross-fertilization. So yeah, your final...
I kind of dithered, Toby, about the bonus moment, because I sort of thought, really, the bonus moment, I should use this as an eloquent tribute to Roger Delgado, who was fantastic, and I loved him. But I kind of thought that's a bit entry level, maybe a bit obvious. You know, he's so brilliant, you almost take for granted that he is the man he was. But for me, the image of the carnival masks that go on the Autons is one of the most terrifying. You know, it's one of those things I had nightmares about. And again, it was so clever of Robert Holmes that he riffed off all these things. They were giving out plastic flowers in supermarkets in 1970, 71. And there were those carnival masks. They were probably the costume designer thinking, what can I do that's cheap and I can hire easily, that have a connection to plastic and blah, blah. But when I saw them, I just thought, what new horror, what fresh terror is this? And that image has stayed with me all these years and always will. I suspect if I'm unlucky enough to develop dementia, I will be babbling away in the care home about scary men in carnival masks, and they won't know what I'm talking about. But it was a very, very kind of scary image. So that's my bonus.
Like they play old. There's a beautiful thing on YouTube at the moment where they've showed an old ballerina, haven't they, or an old classical musician. They've played some of the music, and let's come back to it. So they might play you the Terror of the Autons soundtrack, and you'll point at the
what a soundtrack. If I heard Deadly Dudley's riffs and synth sounds on that, I would be probably quite distressed, because it goes so well with the kind of the macabre comic strip story. It's wonderful stuff.
It is. You're right. It's so easy for things like Dudley Simpson and Roger Delgado. We, as you say, it's sort of we sort of take those for granted, but they definitely are worth saying. Well, look, this is very interesting. Having started Poles Apart, and I've never won this because the chances of me picking the same as somebody else are infinitely small. However, my thing for episode 4 was I don't know if you can read that, is Alien Yellowcoats, which is the big-headed Auton, which I think it's the contrast between the gaudy jollity out front and the sleek, blank, murderous Autons beneath. And my bonus thing, which I think ties in with your first thing, so I don't know, is I was making it up as I wrote it, but inventive death dispensing I've put, which ties in with particularly, I think, but it's the whole litany of them. It's the fact that he gradually gets more economical as he goes along. But I think the genius of the plastic thing that exploits our weakness, kills us very, very simply, and then hides all the evidence, is a sort of ingenious thing that I think as a kid just makes you go, how do they think of this stuff? So actually,
absolutely.
Richard, I think for the first time, if I haven't won, did I get 3 out of the 5 that you did? I certainly think we can call it a score draw, which is as good as I've ever done, because I normally don't get anything.
Well done, Toby. Well done, Toby.
After such an appalling start where I picked the one thing you didn't like, I feel like I grew. I went on a journey. And we were finally.
You totally did, yeah.
Well, I'm so grateful to you, and that was really interesting.
Absolutely.
I think that's so much more interesting to do it where we sort of chat to each other. I would like you to take this opportunity to plug anything you've got to plug, or draw attention to your internet presence or anything, your books or anything that you want to plug. Please do.
Well, the only thing, I mean, I'm in charge of a show for CBBC called Our School, which has been running now, it's going to its 8th year. And it's really interesting to be making that show in the current climate. And going back to the kind of point of finding joy wherever you can find it sometimes in the way that children react and cope with these situations. So it's been amazing and a privilege, without being too lovey about it, to chart how ordinary kids in an ordinary Yorkshire school in the last year have been dealing with this very changed world, and dealing with it in a way that sometimes, just does bring a tear to your eye, because they're so fantastic and funny and warm. And we're carrying on. We go back to start shooting the next season in January, 22 more episodes for CBBC. And so, it may not be everybody's cup of tea, but I think it's always on iPlayer. So just an episode of Our School, that's what I'm very much preoccupied with at the moment. And I think it has a lot of heart and humanity, and is well worth 20 minutes of your time.
Brilliant. Well, we will direct them there. And thank you so much for that, Richard. I'm really grateful.
No, it was my pleasure. It was lovely to talk to you, Toby, and well done.
So, with immense gratitude to Richard, and also I'd like to acknowledge the fact that his was a name I read in Doctor Who magazine as a kid, and then he, of course, done good because he went on to be producer of Blue Peter. I can recommend his Blue Peter Diaries, very entertaining. But I know he was also very helpful on the John Nathan Turner documentary that Chris Chapman did, and of course Richard wrote that very good book about John Nathan Turner. So Richard's a very important contributor to Doctor Who, but when I was a lad, he was, one of the gatekeepers of the legend, and wrote up a lot of those interviews that I alluded to during my commentary there. So the fact that I think I've met him once. We've emailed a couple of times about a couple of things. He's been very helpful to me with my Quatermass book, and if he's got anything, he shares it. And he shared it with me, which is not always common in the world of Doctor Who or TV sci-fi writing. I've always found him extremely kind and cooperative. So I'm really glad that he's contributed to this, and this process is given credibility by his presence on it. So thanks to Richard. Thanks to you for listening. I hope you go away and dream up inventive ways to destroy the human race. If not, just have fun. And I'll see you on the next one of these. But that was Terror of the Autons, which I've come out of this process enjoying much more than I anticipated when I went into it. And that's the whole blooming point. Don't go changing. Ta-ta. Thank you so much for listening to Happy Times and Places with me, Toby Hadoke, and my special guest, Richard Marson, who you can follow on Twitter at Richard Marson 2. The music for this podcast was specially composed by Dave Gates, and the artwork was by Dylan Patterson. Thanks to this edition's featured patrons, who are Ruben Herfindahl, Rob Leonard, Stephen Moffat, Richard Straw, Pascal Zierka, Sydney Wilson, John Williams, Rich Wiggins, Kevin West, Peter Ware, Alistair Wallace, Gary Wales, John Turner, Sidney Trote, Paul Taylor-Greaves, Adam Stone, Dave Stevens, David Spencer, Richard Smith, Paul Shields, Jim Sangster, Tom Selinsky, and Gavin Rymel. If you'd like to join those names and become a patron, please do so at patreon.com/Toby Hadoke. I will also take donations at kofi.com/Toby Hadoke if you'd just like to do the one-off thing. Anything, of course, is welcome, as is any review or positive rating you can give at any podcast outlet of your choice. It all helps, and I'm grateful for any of it. Next week, I'm going to squash your favourite Beatles because I'm taking you all on a chase.